Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Roy Neel, the former longtime Chief of Staff for Vice President Al Gore and Deputy Chief of Staff for President Bill Clinton back in the late 1990s. Roy, you've got a new book out. It's called The Electors. It concerns a future presidential election. It seems to be in 2020. It's a novel. A Republican is in the White House, is seeking to get reelected, but comes up short in the electoral, it looks like in the electoral vote, 270 to 267. But he and his friends on that side and the president's side find a way over the 6 weeks or so since then, since the election, to try to turn some electors, and they actually do it enough to make a difference and to actually get reelected.
Well, that's right. You just gave a spoiler. But what a lot of people don't realize still is that we don't elect a president, we elect electors. And in 21 states, there's nothing to prevent those electors from switching their vote. And it's an extraordinary artifact of the Constitution. So I got to thinking about this concept of faithless electors. What if that were to happen? If you had a close election where only a few electoral votes were to separate the candidates, which we saw that in 2000, we could see it again. And with so much money now pouring into politics, not just in campaigns, but in kind of shady super PAC research operations, that you could have a massive corruption.
Your book has a lot of that research in it. I mean, there's a lot in there. You would have thought you were inside the NSA for a lot of it in terms of these people who are out looking at these electors and talking to them. They know everything about them. They know everything they're doing. And what you're telling me is your book, while it's not based on something that actually happened, it's something that could happen and you think could happen legally.
It could absolutely happen. That's right. And not only could you have electors that decide to switch, but you could have a corrupt secret enterprise to go turn those electors. And you could change the course of a presidential election. And as we've seen in the past, presidential elections matter, and who becomes president matters. You know, armies are deployed, people die, all kinds of things, economies collapse. So it's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
Well, if we're going to keep the Electoral College, and I want to ask you about that a little bit later, should we make all the electors have to be mandated to vote the way their states vote? Or you're telling me you think right now that could even be challenged in the states where they require it?
It couldn't be done now. There are scholars who believe that even in the 29 states where there are laws to prevent that those laws are probably unconstitutional. So you essentially have 538 free agents out there who could act against the will of the people no matter what the popular vote was. The answer here is would ideally be to abolish the Electoral College. Makes no sense.
Which takes a constitutional amendment.
It takes a constitutional amendment. There is a way to essentially defang the Electoral College, but every state would have to enact laws that required electors to cast their votes according to the popular vote proportionally in their state. It's kind of complicated, and there have been moves to do that, but all 50 states would have to agree, which is kind of far-fetched right now.
Now, the presidential race, if we went to an all-popular vote, a lot of people complain that states kind of get left out of the process, that they either assume everybody knows where their votes are going to go, or it doesn't matter, they don't have enough electoral votes to make a difference. If we go to all popular, though, aren't we going to see basically the election waged from, say, Ohio and Pennsylvania north to the northeast, Florida, Texas, and California, and the rest of the country kind of gets left out?
Actually, Pat, I think it's just the reverse of that, because if you elect the president purely by popular vote, then every state would matter. Every state would matter all over the country. Right now,
the margins would matter by how much you carry a state.
Exactly. So you would have candidates who would have to campaign in all those states because every vote would matter. I mean, we have a system now where probably only 10 or 12 states matter. It's assumed by the presidential campaigns that California is going to go this way, Texas is going to go this way, and so on. So they don't even campaign in those places because they know those electoral votes are going to one candidate or the other to start with. So it's a highly undemocratic process right now.
Now, I want to ask you something specifically about your book. I want to keep a lot of it vague because I don't want to lick all the candy off the stick. And I thought the book was a page turner. I think it's very interesting. Your book portrays a vice president in that particular administration who kind of goes off the reservation quite a bit a couple of times during it. And one of the things that sets him off in particular is the administration's lack of being strong about the environment. Now, you worked for a vice president who was very strong on the environment. Is there any stuff about this that reflects the relationship between Al Gore and Bill Clinton? Because that relationship was not very good in this book.
Well, no, absolutely not. And it would be tempting to do that. First of all, you have to remember that you have a conservative. In my book, The Electors, you have a conservative president whose administration is absolutely opposed to strict environmental rules. That was not the case with Bill Clinton and that administration. Al Gore had a huge impact on the direction of of those policies in the Clinton-Gore White House. The relationships between vice presidents and presidents have been odd since the beginning of time, but Gore and Clinton had a remarkably close working relationship on issues of the environment especially. So there's really not, the only parallel is that vice presidents are vice presidents. Presidents make decisions. And in some cases, not in the Clinton-Gore relationship, but in others, vice presidents become marginalized. They're ignored. And that's really the basis of what happened in this book.
One of the reasons I bring that up is that the relationship Clinton to Gore is important now because Mrs. Clinton is running for president. They were involved with each other in the White House when they were there before. Did that make that relationship, because Mrs. Clinton played a very strong role as First Lady, particularly in the healthcare issue, did that create a stranger relationship between the vice president and the president because of that?
Well, Mrs. Clinton had a large role in areas, policy areas, that she knew a lot about and cared a lot about, but they didn't overlap the issues that Al Gore was most involved in: the environment, technology, communications, those kinds of things.
But he's not endorsing her yet, and some people are raising questions as to why he's not endorsed her, since she's very likely to be the Democratic nominee.
Well, I think she will be the nominee, but he
will endorse her?
Well, I can't speak for Al Gore, but he did the same thing. Happened in 2004. He tried to stay neutral because you had Democrats running, and I think he's going to want to make sure that the next administration is active and committed to climate change policies.
Does he have more leverage that way? There's been talk he's been holding back because he has more leverage on the global warming issue if he doesn't endorse. How does he get that leverage from that?
Well, first of all, there's no one in the climate change policy universe like Al Gore. I mean, here's a guy who won the Nobel Peace Prize. He had an Academy Award film, which really opened the issue up for millions of people. And he began a popular movement to take action on climate change. So there's not anyone like him in that world. I think his leverage is that of the whole movement. I mean, he gave an incredible momentum to that movement, and that momentum is carrying forward. I don't think he's trying to exercise leverage on the process. It's out there. President Obama, consults with Al Gore. Every serious candidate would. I mean, he's had a good relationship with Hillary Clinton on this issue when she was in the Senate and he was promoting these issues in the Congress. I think he will. An endorsement is really not so much of an issue with the Democratic candidate. Both Clinton and Bernie Sanders are. And they have the right attitudes about acting on climate change. The problem is what those Republican candidates would want to do.
Well, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about how the 2016 race looks on the Republican side of it. We're talking to Roy Neel, former Chief of Staff for Vice President Al Gore and Deputy Chief of Staff for Bill Clinton. He's also talking to us about the new novel he's got coming out in the next few weeks. It's called The Electors. I think I can hold it up right here, and you can get pretty good of a look at it. We'll come back and we'll take a break and be right back to talk more with Roy Neel. Stay with us.